Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Doing Well, the Wellbeing Science Insights Podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We're champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Lu Ngo, coming to your ears from Narm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Doing Well. And on this week's episode, we are going to talk about technology's role in shaping digital well-being. Not a new topic, but a slightly new angle this week. And joining me in the studio today is Dr. Matthew Harrison. Matt is an experienced teacher, researcher, and digital creator with a passion for utilizing technology to enhance social capacity building, belonging, and inclusion in education. He has taught in Australia, South Korea, and the United Kingdom at primary, secondary, and tertiary levels. Matt is currently a member of the University of Melbourne, Faculty of Education Learning Intervention Team, and a project lead at the University of Melbourne Neurodiversity Project. He was awarded the Dyson Fellowship in 2020 and the Jem Scott Teaching Fellowship and the International Society for Technology and Education Making It Happen Award in 2023. Thanks so much for joining us, Matt.
Thanks, Lou.
Well, it's great to have you here today, and I think we've had a really long warm-up, so hopefully you're comfortable and ready for this conversation. I'm sure it will be fun. Not a very fun topic for a lot of people because, I guess they don't really care about digital well-being, even though we're online pretty much every day now. Before we get into the topic, let's talk about you a bit more. We have our opening section called Have You Met Matt? I'm going to get you to share a few things that you love so our audience get to know you a bit better. First of all, what is your favorite book?
Okay, this is a really good question. And I guess I've got two answers for this one.
Yeah, even better.
The first one, it's a little bit dark.
Okay.
The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Have you read that?
No. What is that about?
Oh, it's about sort of a post-apocalyptic future with a father and his son and a journey.
Okay.
And it is quite confronting to read, but it's also one of those stories that stays with you. And I won a heap of awards. And I remember someone telling me when I was younger and I was overseas traveling, and they said, "Oh, you got to read this book."
Okay.
And I read it, and I was like, "Oh, wow, what did I just read?" But the actual story itself is really powerful. I think if anyone here listening doesn't quite have time for a book, there's a film version as well from 2009, which is
Googling it. Yeah.
I think the book's much better, but the film's good too.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, there's a movie for those who don't want to read, but I'm probably gonna read it. I'm in an apocalypse sort of phase. Like I just really want to watch movies about it. Like I don't know why. It's just fun.
Well, I think a lot of people are watching the Fallout TV series at the moment as well.
Oh, I don't know what that's about.
Oh, Google that. Have a look later on.
Okay. Yeah.
If anyone else is listening to this and is not sure what to watch, I highly recommend watching Fallout as well.
Okay. And you said you've got two books
I do.
to recommend.
So I'm a primary school teacher. So I thought if people think The Road, then they read the Wikipedia page on that. And it's a bit dark.
Okay.
I love the children's book, The Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch. It was my favorite book as a young child. Have you read that one?
I have not.
Oh, it's an absolute classic.
Okay.
And so if there's any teachers listening and you haven't read this with your primary school students, I highly recommend having a look.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I see it. It's a very classic one. Oh, it looks so nice. Cool. Well, there's a 45th anniversary edition, so it's been around for a very long time.
While. I remember reading it as a child, and the plot in one sentence is that the lighthouse keeper and his partner, they have a pulley system across from the lighthouse to their house, and lunch keeps getting sent across to the lighthouse keeper, but the seagulls keep taking it, and so they keep trying different ways to stop the seagulls. And I won't give spoilers away, but if you like cats,
I love cats.
Yeah, I love cats
3.
too. I've got one.
Okay,
but if you like cats, it's a good book as well.
Okay,
but it's quite fun.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Like children books are amazing. So
they are, yes.
Yeah, great recommendation. 2 very different recommendations as
very,
well.
Different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah,
yes.
like Apocalypse. Children's book. Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So you already talked about the book, which is also a movie, but I also want to know what other movie you would like to share with our audience, like a favorite of yours.
A favorite from a film. And I think it's like, I love films.
Yeah.
This is an oldie, but it's a classic.
Okay.
I love Jurassic Park.
Okay.
The OG, 1993, Spielberg original.
Love it.
The new ones, not so great, but I've seen them all.
Yeah.
But I grew up in the 90s and we were talking about Pokemon before we started recording.
Yeah.
But also like Jurassic Park. I had Jurassic Park cards in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And recently it was an anniversary. It was 2023 was the 30-year anniversary, which makes me feel extremely old.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Actually, I only saw it, I think, probably 3 years ago. Jurassic Park? Yeah. Because like it was never a thing when I was growing up. And you know, we had like so many different things on TV in Vietnam. So we were just kind of like following whatever was on the TV, and there was no internet. So, you know, it was until recently when all the new ones came out that I was like, maybe I should start watching them. And they were so good. Yeah, I really love dinosaurs. Like,
me too, yes.
I'm obsessed a little bit. So
yes,
like,
that's great.
That was fun to watch. So you said you've been on a few podcasts as a guest, but I wonder if you listen to podcasts yourself.
Not often, but my partner does.
Yeah.
So when we're driving together, it's late at night and, you know, if she's driving, she'll say, oh, could we listen to a podcast to stay awake? And she is listening to a podcast, a whole series called Just the Gist.
Okay, that's a new one.
Explains like historical events in a really like short, simple way. And it's quite humorous. They're sort of out there, outlandish stories.
Yeah.
And some of them are like, some are just simply incredible. And like, you're not sure whether this actually happened or not. So I should be driving, so I'll be Googling it, saying this surely couldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And mostly accurate what they talk about, the way they describe events.
Yeah. I saw here that the genre is a comedy podcast.
Comedy, they definitely there's comedy, but some of the stories like the Hindenburg, the airship, the explosion, people survived. You know, like the giant blimp, and just how people survived that. And just the history behind it, and all the little human stories.
Very interesting. Yeah, it said famous scandals, true crime, celeb dramas, conspiracy theories, politics.
Yeah,
but fun.
But made fun. Yes.
Yeah, made fun. That's interesting. Okay. I haven't listened to podcasts in quite a bit because it's kind of hard to get back into them. But this is definitely something I'll try listening to.
My attention span is so short. And so like podcasts, I'll be tuning out and trying to drive as well. That task switching between listening to a podcast.
Yeah. True. Thank you, though. It's a good recommendation.
Thank you.
What about your role model? Or maybe you have multiple role models.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that I've got lots of role models in my life, and I've got senior academics at the University of Melbourne. There's one in particular who sort of took me under her wing, and she's one of those people who has an amazing academic history. Yeah. Has done, you know, theoretically, you know, and in terms of impact, in terms of advocacy, has moved the ball forward, but also the way that she cares for people within our faculty. Yeah. And I won't name her because she'll be really embarrassed. But I think just this idea that we've got this generation of academics who are close to retirement, who have sort of looked after the next generation. Yeah. And I've got a teacher, a high school teacher as well, who really sparked my passion for education. And, you know, I could have gone very easily, have not completed university. Yeah. Or, you know, or not have achieved a lot of things in my life. And teachers often for many people, when you ask them, about role models, people think back to teachers from when they were at school.
Yeah.
No matter what job they're doing, really can shape and change lives. That's why I became a teacher myself. It was that direct influence of people who had taught me and helped me.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. I love it when guests talk about a teacher or an educator that has impacted their lives in a positive way. And, maybe some of them go into education themselves. It's full circle. I think it's actually quite a quite tough job being educators because, you just don't know what you're dealing with most of the time.
It is. And I think we have a system, an education system. It's in Australia, but also it's funny, I was talking to my colleagues in South Korea or the UK, really similar issues, systemic pressure.
Yep, definitely.
Nothing is more important to people than their kids, of course.
Yeah.
But then, you've got 24, 30, in South Korea, 40 kids in a class and trying to manage the academic and social needs of those people and well-being needs of those children it can be really challenging. And so I think often teachers are between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I remember the PTSD of going into a class of 60 students when I was in high school in Vietnam. It was 60 students and we didn't have air conditioning and, all of that flashbacks. But then now thinking back on it, I realized that what you said was a really good point because a lot of students and me, myself included, we were kind of tough on our educators because we're like, they didn't care about this and that. But at the same time, there were 60 of us.
Yeah.
So they're probably under a lot of pressure as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, of course,
Yeah.
I think most teachers really want to want the best for their kids.
Yeah.
And their young adults that they're working with. And I think that's a global thing.
Oh, yeah.
You get into education, you have to like kids.
Yeah, definitely. But I guess, the challenge is understanding each and every single one of the 60, for example, or 40 in the class. But the kids probably don't really understand it because, we were all kids once. We probably relate on the point that not all of us really cared about what the educators in the classroom were going through.
Yeah.
Because we had our own needs. And I think as kids, we're pretty much self-centered, just thinking about what we wanted to do that particular day or that semester, what we wanted to achieve rather than, they are dealing with us, not the other way around.
I think when you grow up, I'm using that language because I don't think I really have grown up that much. But as you get older, you look back at your sort of last decade and you realize you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And then I've realized that point, having just turned 40 myself, it's like, maybe I don't know what I don't know now. It's always the case.
Yeah.
You can I'll look back at 50 and go, oh, geez, in my 40s. Poor naive Matt. He had no idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why educators are so wonderful in that sense because sometimes I remember this because a lot of the teachers told us stories. And I remember this one teacher who really shared stories about Australia before I moved here. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. And every single class, she would tell us a different story. Yeah. And that kept the class engaging and it's more fun to study. So, I just love hearing that you have this role model that was your teacher, one of your teachers.
History teacher
Yeah.
in year 11. And then because of that, I had such, I think a good connection with the teacher, but also she helped me to become, I guess, to grow up.
Yeah.
Using the language again to become, and, take responsibility for my learning and also to love what I was learning.
Yeah.
I shifted all my subjects in year 12 so I could have her again,
okay.
for year 12 literature. And you think the number of people that teacher must have, empowered or, changed their lives. I think that's pretty special.
Yeah. So would that history class be your favorite class or course you've taken?
I think so. It was Renaissance Italian history.
Wow. Okay.
Which is niche. Yeah. And then English literature in year 12. And in year 11, I did that history subject.
Yeah.
And I did all the other maths and sciences. And then I changed everything in year 12. I think there was a bit of concern from my parents.
Yeah.
I did information systems, psychology, literature, English, because you have to do the English subject, and trying to think of I can't remember. Oh, legal studies. So I went from the sciences to the humanities.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed both the sciences and the humanities over my lifetime. But yeah, it's the person teaching that can make a big difference.
Yeah, nice. I love that because it's a class from so long ago, but you still remember it. So I was guessing that's probably your favorite one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I think we've got to know you a bit better now, and let's talk about today's topic. So we are talking about technology's role in digital well-being, but let's start with well-being overall first. So I think as an educator yourself, you probably have done a lot of research into the space of, education with, I think you were talking about neurodiversity. And, you probably know a lot about people in general, and then that audience of, neurodiverse people as well. So what do you think of well-being personally?
Yeah, so it's such an interesting topic because it's such a big focus, particularly, we're here in Melbourne, post the COVID-19 lockdowns we had here that were quite extensive, and coming out of that, where schools were closed down and they're reopened again, there was a big shift in our education systems to focusing on well-being.
Yeah.
And there's this talk of a well-being crisis. And I think when I step back and think, what do we mean by well-being? What does it mean to me? And I think a big part of that is really just that sense of people feeling safe, and that they believe that not everything, well-being doesn't mean that everything's going to always be perfect.
Yeah.
But it's having that agency and that, I guess, self-efficacy, that belief that you can actually improve your situation. That I think those are the indicators of a positive well-being. The fact that there's hope.
Yeah.
And that sense that, I can do this. So I think it's that self-belief intersect with that feeling of safe. You're so, in your social environment, that you feel safe and you feel like you belong to a community. So there are all sorts of technical measures of well-being and ways that we can assess that.
Yeah.
But that feeling, well-being for me is a feeling. It's that safety and connectedness and belonging, interspersed with that belief that when you do encounter the things that we all encounter in life, you have a belief that these can be resolved either by yourself or by asking for help.
Yeah. I think, looking back on COVID, it's actually quite true when you think about well-being. I think a lot of people started to feel a sense of imbalance, and they felt like everything was out of control, which is why the level of well-being was so low back then. And even after that, you're so right in saying that the education system has kind of shifted, and even workplaces, right?
Yeah.
We've all started to implement all these strategies about well-being, understanding well-being better. And even what we're doing here at LMSL is about well-being too, overall. So, I guess now we care more about well-being. But speaking of education, it's interesting because everything should start with education. And I find it interesting that it took a whole pandemic for the world to realize, we didn't educate anyone about well-being till now.
And it's really interesting because a lot of the challenges around well-being that the young people experienced in Australia were the same challenges my year 11s and 12s were experiencing in South Korea, in Incheon, in Ulsan in South Korea.
Yeah.
And then, in the UK, I was, working with people in sort of upper primary, sort of that 10, 11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
And they're just encountering things like social media, and their sense of self is being formed and shaped.
True.
And it was interesting. Again, the same challenges. So it seems to be a transcultural thing. In my experiences. I'm not sure if you're still in contact with people in Vietnam or.
Well, yeah, I'm still in contact with people, my friends, for example, family. A lot has changed.
Yeah.
I'm not super in touch with the digital space.
Yeah.
But before I moved here, I think it was pretty much the same thing you were saying, like forming identity and spending a lot of time on social media and being impacted by all these different things. And even now as an adult, I've moved here, it's a whole different culture, but same challenges or similar challenges, I would say. And a lot of people there nowadays, they probably even deactivate all these different social media accounts or, just go MIA because, they just don't need to be in that space because it impacts their well-being so much.
Oh, there's so much here to unpack, isn't there? It's really interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned about neurodiversity is really important because this focus on well-being has sort of happened, a little bit in parallel to the rise of the neurodiversity movement. And for your listeners who are not familiar with neurodiversity, this is the concept that conditions or differences, as I prefer to say it, such as autism or ADHD or dyslexia, are natural variations. So when we think of biodiversity, we think that there's plants and animals, and there's not, there's not anything wrong with a fern versus a Venus flytrap. There's diversity in our natural diversity around our world. And I think we start thinking of brains the same way and seeing people with ADHD or the autistic community or people who are dyslexic, there's natural variations. It's about how we remove barriers for people so that people who are neurodivergent, people who have these neurological differences, can access our world. It's really important. And this focus on well-being for neurodivergent people has happened at the same time as this emergence out of the lockdowns in Melbourne and around the world. The pandemic was a universally shared experience. Like even I was in the University of Michigan and talking about the lockdowns in Michigan in the United States. And just very similar stories about autistic people. Some people, obviously cut off from their support networks, but others for the first time through online spaces, finding their communities and finding other autistic people to connect with and getting through it together. And those relationships through online spaces have continued, which is really special.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the wins that we got from COVID, I guess. Even though it was pretty much an online space, we still nurture relationships. And I think that kind of helps to add to that level of digital well-being that we were going to talk about today. So that's the good thing about this whole lockdown pandemic shenanigan. We've talked about that quite a bit on the show because we realized so many things about well-being thanks to the pandemic. But I think today let's talk a bit more about that angle of neurodiversity because you're so experienced in the space. Normally on the show we talk about well-being in general, so for the popular public. But I think why don't we talk a little bit more about that specific audience that don't get a lot of attention, especially when it comes to things that people tend to get wrong about them and their well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that's really interesting because there's a lot of misconceptions. And we know the research says
I would think so.
Around this. And there's also a lot of parallels to neurotypical people who aren't neurodivergent. And, we're all human at the end of the day. And that's the big thing, is that shared humanity and how we interact with things like social media, but also like online gaming communities and other spaces as well. There's this really, I think, this common humanity, and often we focus on these differences rather than those shared experiences. That's something that I think for listeners at home or driving or wherever you are, I think that's really interesting.
So for that point, I think you mentioned that there are some parallels and things that people probably just didn't really pay attention to. What would be some key things, some key misconceptions about the well-being of neurodiverse people that other people tend to overlook or just, have massive misconceptions about that you would like to address?
So within that neurodivergence umbrella, including lots of different neurological differences, like conditions such as autism or ADHD or dyslexia, the autistic community, I think there's a lot of misconceptions around people who are autistic. I've got a lot of autistic friends and family. I think the idea that people who are autistic don't want or need social connection is a huge misconception. And the idea that people are very happy off alone. Yeah, some people are happy, but most autistic people we know really value a sense of connection to others. It just looks different. And it's sort of a bit like thinking of cultural differences. If you start thinking of autism as a culture, you can say, the way that we socially interact might be different, but we still need that, human connection.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a very important point because I think probably 10 years ago, I I heard about, autism.
Yeah.
And people with autism, and before I moved here, and it was a really big thing in Vietnam where people were kind of saying like, oh, this kid is autistic, like he's basically broken, according to their language.
Yeah.
And the kid doesn't need anyone, just wants to be by himself. And then today, what you're saying to me is basically helping me to understand that a bit better with another lens, that no, the kid actually needs social connection. It's just, it looks different, and the parents and the people around the kids probably need to understand it better. Yeah. Otherwise, we will probably provide the support or, promote their well-being in a way that doesn't really help them.
Yeah, and I think like that experience that you're sharing, in a Vietnamese context is really interesting because it's around the world.
Yeah,
and a lot of it comes from the early research in the 1940s.
Yeah,
and the way that we've understood our systems changed dramatically since the first papers that were published in 1943 by Leo Kanner and his team at Johns Hopkins, and those unfortunately some of the stereotypes that were perpetuated in those papers really narrowed the focus on people who perhaps had co-occurring intellectual disabilities, but also there was a big misunderstanding about this this construct, this group of behaviours and characteristics that we call autistic. And as we have understood that it's a broader spectrum, of using the language of spectrum, or a broader range of differences, we've identified there's we think 50% of people who are autistic are also female or non-binary. It's really interesting to see that those perceptions of what it means to be autistic are shifting.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing around that preference for social isolation, I think it's this idea of that social anxiety is huge for a lot of people who are autistic. And so it's about creating conditions and environments.
Yeah.
And that's where digital spaces have been really, really wonderful for a lot of people, because they can connect and find interactions, have interactions with other people without that need for physical proximity.
Interesting.
It's helped a lot of other people too.
Yeah, it's interesting. And a nice segue into the next part of the conversation, because we are talking about well-being in general. Then we have digital well-being. And I think you mentioned this at the perfect time, because we have understood now, and all of us kind of know, that technology has fundamentally changed how we view ourselves in the 21st century. But it also changed, I think, the way we view well-being, digital well-being, and, well-being for a lot of different people that, like you're saying, neurotypical or neurodivergent. So this new change in technology, and as you said yourself, you grew up in the 90s, so you've seen it all, from the 90s to now in the 21st century with the COVID-19, people just, connecting through the internet. How has that actually, the change process, how has actually happened? And also, what are the key things that we should notice in this century because of the rise of technology and all these different tools that we can use to connect with different people?
Oh, it's really, it's been a lot of changes, hasn't there? And I was born in 1984, and we had a 286 computer. I'm not sure if this is like an old computer.
Okay.
And it's like an IBM 286. Okay. Yeah, have a look. Okay. And they're like, if you're at home, I'll give you a verbal description. It's like one of those beige boxes. And it's got a massive, a CRT monitor.
Okay.
And you had a keyboard and you had a mouse, and the mouse used to have a mouse ball in it that used to get full of fluff. You have to take the mouse ball out for optical mice.
Okay.
And it was, using the disk operating system, Microsoft DOS.
Yes,
you had to type in commands in to run it. And you think now that, in my pocket, I, usually have my iPhone 14 mini iPhone. You think about the processing power of that and the networking capabilities compared to what we used to have.
Yep.
It's been such a huge shift. And I look back at our, my lifetime, and there's probably been three really, I think, paradigm shifting changes in what technology has afforded and allowed people to do in terms of that social connection. And the first is obviously the old internet.
Yeah.
And in the early 90s, I remember going to what used to be Ballarat University with my dad and going on to Netscape Navigator and spending 5 minutes or longer waiting for a picture of the Mona Lisa to come up on my screen from the top to the bottom, the early days of the internet through like a dial-up connection and being like, whoa, I'm getting a picture from France, from the Louvre. This is wild.
Wow.
And so the World Wide Web is the first one, this idea of, and I remember, I don't know if you ever had dial-up internet.
No.
Oh, no, this is the internet you plug into the phone line.
I understand it from watching TV shows.
Yeah.
And talking to people where they're kind of like, oh, I have to unplug it and plug in. I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And you had to fight with your parents because you're trying to be on MSN chat while your parents want to call someone. You've only got one phone line.
Oh, okay.
And so people whose parents, had a bit more money have a second phone line installed just for the internet so you could always be on.
Right.
But I remember trying to download things and your parents would unplug it and you'd lose your download halfway through. You're like, no. Or you'd be on a conversation or playing a game online with someone.
Yeah.
And that was the big change, the World Wide Web. So you're connecting from your home to people around the world. The next one is obviously, so this is an extension of the first one. Wi-Fi cards, when people started getting Wi-Fi cards, and I remember I had a MacBook, and I was like, what, I can bring my laptop and connect in any backpackers hostel, or I can go to a cafe. And the idea that you're not in a room on the internet anymore, the internet's kind of moving with you.
Yeah.
And that one sort of leads into the second big change, which is mobile internet.
Yeah.
And iPhone, it's a game changer, 2007. The idea that you suddenly have the internet in your pocket always.
Yeah.
And so, like the idea that the internet is truly with you and you're always on. You're always online because it's in your pocket. And it's not something you have to go and power up and connect in. And so your friends around the world or your contacts or the person that you're trolling in a completely different country, which I'm sure none of your listeners have ever done this, we're breaking down like geographical distance here.
Definitely.
And you have people, through mobile internet, just straight away, just texting a friend in the UK, asking, can you just send me that resource? Or it's as if they're, they could be a room away or they could be on the other side of the world and it's the same thing.
Absolutely.
And alongside that is the rise of social media. So, I got Facebook in 2006.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the start of Facebook.
Well, I think I remembered friends talking about it, but I didn't really get into it until I was in high school. So that was probably like 2010.
Yeah.
But I remember it started becoming a thing after MySpace.
Yeah.
That's what I remembered.
So there was MySpace. Yeah. And there was like a huge investment by Murdoch in MySpace. And this thing called Facebook, I remember I was living in Toronto at the time. I was 21. And you needed to have a university email address. So you felt like you're kind of like gated off from your parents. And this is 2006. And so I still had my undergraduate university email account. So I could create an account and sign up. And it was sort of like, everyone was sort of like saying, hey, get on Facebook. We'll get on Facebook together. We'll share photos from going out and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it was sort of seen as a space for people in their 20s to connect. It was an extension of people you already knew.
Yeah.
It wasn't meeting people necessarily outside your social network.
Yeah.
But it was a free-for-all. It was wild. People were sharing things.
Yep.
And there was no concept that this was ever going to be a bad idea.
Yeah.
That you could share whatever you wanted to share.
Absolutely.
People uploading photos of other people without their consent because this is still pre-iPhone.
Yeah.
So, and like, it was Nokia cameras, which were terrible, blurry, like 0.5 megapixel or maybe 1 megapixel, sort of cameras. Or actual digital cameras you used to see around all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then very quickly sort of became everyone was on Facebook. They dropped the requirement and became this global thing where you're employers. And I remember a couple of friends who had joined a Facebook group that was criticizing our employer at the time.
Yeah.
It was making fun of them and their ad campaign were called into a meeting with management. This is like 2007.
Oh.
And it was the first time that I, as a young adult, had thought, there's actual consequences here. This is like affecting the real world. This is not just people going clubbing and taking, photos of, people on the dance floor or, house parties. Other people I don't want to see are viewing my profile. People I don't want to see that part of my life. And I think those three shifts, that idea of, the internet as a way of connecting with people, the fact that it's always with you through, smart-enabled devices, and the idea that social media is a thing. It's a way people are connecting, and it's led to things like online dating and things like that. And it's been normalized.
Yeah.
That's huge.
That is huge. And when you walk us through the whole history like that, it must have been like really a shocking change to a lot of people that, grew up with dial-up internet, like you were talking about, like yourself.
Yeah.
And this whole concept of identity, it used to be just, in the real world. I remember there was the old day when, and I talk about this all the time because I love that time so much. Like you just go home from school and you call your friend on the phone and you catch up for an hour, and that's your social time, pretty much. And then you watch TV, but there's no like comparing yourself with other people on social media. There's no like, oh, like I saw this, this thing that person did, or like, you get a random message from someone. Even LinkedIn nowadays, like, professional networking, and you get all these amazing contents, but at the same time, so much peer pressure.
There is, yeah.
So I think there's a big shift in that sense of identity from, a world where there was no internet and no social media to now, in this 21st century, everyone is switched on, and stay online pretty much every day. Even if they don't have social media, they're online in some shape or form for work or, for their daily lives. So where are we at with identity? Because, this is, when you tell me the story, I kind of started thinking about the sense of identity that we have as humans. It has changed so much. And now with our digital lives, what is our identity?
It's really funny because it's when you step back and when I think about my personal lived experience here, I think that the social pressures are always there. Even when I was in high school, from 1997 to 2002. Do you remember, I'm not sure if this is a phase that happened in high school for you. It might have been, it's a very Australian phase, I think.
Okay.
Grey Quicksilver tracksuit pants for physical education.
Well, Aiden might know about that.
Yeah.
I don't really know about that.
So these were like expensive bougie surf brand tracksuit pants.
Right.
And I remember I remember going to our house lap of the lake, which is a running festival where everyone had to run.
Yeah.
And noticing that a lot of kids were wearing the exact same brand and colors.
Yep.
2 or 3 colors. They're usually grey tracksuit pants.
Yep.
And realizing this is a trend, and the trend had spread through our high school. And I remember sort of like bugging my mum, and our school uniform was particularly heinous. Our tracksuit was brown.
Okay.
So you're thinking like, toilet visit brown, it was pretty gross.
Okay.
So I remember like bugging my mum being like, no, that's not school uniform, but saying, oh, can I have them for hockey training or, for soccer training? And I'll wear the proper for game days, I'll wear the proper uniform.
Yeah.
But the tracksuit pants were like $100, back in the 90s. It was a lot. They were expensive.
$100 in the 90s.
And they were a show of status. But people were buying them.
Yeah.
And what that made me think is there's always been that social pressure. What's changed? And to be identified as part of the cool group, if you want to use that language, you needed your grey Quicksilver tracksuit pants.
Yeah.
And I think that's always been there.
Yeah.
But what's changed is the scale of that pressure, because you're not just talking about your local community now. You're looking at people like, your social media influencers who are shaping people's sense of identity of whether or not they belong to their communities, whether or not people want to be friends with them, whether or not people should want to look up to them. That's at a scale has increased that pressure exponentially. So now it's not just your house lap of the lake, running carnival.
Yeah.
It's your local school community. It's looking at people in the US.
True.
Or the UK or China or anywhere in the world, seeing what should I be doing? How should I be acting if I want to have friends and to be, to be accepted by my community?
Yeah, that is interesting, and I think that pressure is so big, but at the same time, it has this impact on so many different people nowadays. And when you talk about that silver tracksuit, I think about the equivalent nowadays. Now, I might get this wrong. I'm not sure if this is correct. Air Force One.
Yeah.
Everyone has Air Force One.
Yes.
We make a joke about Air Force One in this studio pretty much every other week.
Yes.
And when I moved to Australia, it was not really a thing, or maybe I didn't pay attention. And what I've noticed is when I visited my family in Vietnam, same thing. Air Force One for everyone.
Yeah.
On the street. Or maybe it's some other brand. That's kind of like, you probably have like 50% of people or young people on the street wearing Air Force One. And then the other 30% wearing MLB, which is like a brand. But it's like a local thing. So there's this impact, this combined impact of what you see on the internet internationally. So here in Australia, same thing as Vietnam. And, when I go to other places like Indonesia, same thing.
Yeah.
And when you look at the local scale, they have like other things on top of that. So I think this sense of identity is interesting because we get confused.
Yeah.
What I think about now is we probably get confused because we get impacted by so many different sources.
We do, yeah.
Yeah. Like we have these trends that we need to follow because our friends are following them. And then we have these trends that we want to follow because like you see these cool influencer from, the US. There's so many of them in the US that you kind of like, oh, I want to do that too. So I think our sense of identity is just constantly changing and it's harder and harder to become ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting, like you mentioned Indonesia, I went a few years ago.
Yeah.
And realizing how big the English Premier League is there. And really the fact that as far as I'm aware, there's no Indonesian players in the English Premier League. As far as I know, I'll Google that afterwards.
Okay, yeah.
But the idea that you've got these young Indonesian kids and young Australian kids and young Austrian kids and young Canadian kids all wearing these Messi jerseys, this Argentinian football player. And it's like this global scale of branding around and how that affects identity. So if you want to be a good soccer or football player, the idea that your sense of like who's the best, it's shaped so much. Obviously Messi has an incredible record, but also this global branding exercise by companies and how that affects identities. If you want to fit in, you need to be wearing an Argentinian or it was Barcelona at the time, Messi jersey to sort of get that sense of like, I'm in, and it's a global pressure.
Right.
It always blew my mind. And then that was before, I remember I actually went to Vietnam and I remember I bought an AC Milan top. I was selling tops and there was people wearing like, European League, soccer league tops.
Yeah.
And it's like, so there has always been through traditional media pressure to sort of this globalization, but it just seems to be so much more extensive now for young people in particular that who's your role model? Like you asked me at the start of this discussion, who's your role model? People are less likely to pick someone in their neighborhood, I think, and more likely to pick someone who's a global celebrity.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. The same for me. When I first started doing this podcast, we were doing test podcasts and somebody asked me who my role model was. And, at the time I was just like, yeah, Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Love her. Still love her. But then my answer changed. Brene Brown. Researcher, love her. And then now that I think about, all the conversations I've had about well-being and what we are talking about today, I was like, are they really role models or do I just look up to them in different ways? And, perhaps I have multiple people that I look up to in real life too. Yeah. And that's the question that I keep asking myself in that context of digital identity and our identity overall.
Yeah.
because I'm a confused young person is what I would like to call myself.
That's good. And like a question around like, do you respect their values?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want their life?
Yeah.
Do you envy their lifestyle, or is it a combination of the two? I mean, that's the question. Like, I mean, Taylor Swift is a great example at the moment. One of my good friends and colleagues is a Swiftie. She is a mad keen. Her special interest or her passion is in Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And it is this question of like, yeah, you know what? This is someone who is an empowered woman who is, you know, absolutely killing it in terms of business and in terms of producing music. Seems to work very, very hard.
Yeah.
So there's values there. There's the fact that she's also an expert brander and the way that she gets her fans so excited about a triple album launch. You know, like I haven't seen that much excitement in a long time.
Yep.
And I think it's the idea of people, that is the idea of like, is it that I look up to them?
Yeah.
Is it I respect their values? Is it that I want to be their friend? You know, like I want to be thought of as someone who could be Taylor Swift's friend, you know, or that I'll really like their lifestyle. I think there's lots of things to unpack there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why this topic is so important because you have a good point there about Taylor Swift. Like, I want to give that example because my partner talked to me about the concert when we were on our way back, driving home. And I went to the first night. That was the second night. We were driving home from a dinner. And he said, this is like a cult. And I'm like, no, it's not a cult. If it is a good cult. And then I started thinking about the argument that we just made to each other. And he was like, well, same thing that you were saying. I adore her business strategy and what she does, but this is like impacting traffic everywhere. So there's a sense of like, I don't like this person because of that. And I'm like, and then that conversation made me think about what exactly do I adore about her?
Yeah.
Do I love everything about her?
Yeah.
No. Let's be frank, no. And that shaped my identity for a very big portion of my early 20s.
Yeah.
But not anymore. And I think that's the nice thing about growing older.
Yeah.
But I think this is something that we all need to start learning at a younger age, you know, this sense of identity, because if I hadn't learned or if I still refuse to learn, I might still be the same younger, confused person that's just like, everything about, I want to be everything that Taylor Swift is about, which is not going to happen.
Now, I know because I know I'm on your podcast, so you're asking the questions, but I really want to dig a little bit deeper into that because
go for it.
When we talk about like Taylor Swift or BTS, I've got a colleague and friend in the US who's a mad keen part of ARMY.
Yeah.
And the idea of, is it that we idolize the person or is it the feeling of connection through we being, you know, identifying as part of this, you know, ARMY or being a Swiftie, connection to other people? Is it from a well-being perspective, the fact that we, through online spaces and through, you know, in-person fan events and that sort of thing, that we connect with other people and we find purpose and we find friendship and we find, we find people who maybe when we're not loving life, just someone else to share a moment with or to share a hobby or an interest with. Yeah. And I think back to the autistic community because there is, and it's you know, this typical autistic behavior that, you know, people say it's a stereotype, but I think it's very true for a lot of people, this intense interest in things. And so I come back to my autistic friend who's a Swiftie. It's allowed her to meet other autistic Swifties and to begin to accept or embrace being autistic. Yeah. And when she experiences challenges, because, you know, there are challenges in a neurotypically normed world, she's got a network through online spaces of people she can go get a pep talk from or people who listen to her. And it's really, I think, that connection. I'm a gamer and online gaming has been a space for me where you can find people and you can pretend that something awful is not happening in your life because we're all going to have awful things. We're all going to have sick parents, or we're going to have, breakups. We're going to have, pets die. That one makes me really sad. But it is that idea of having that connection through community around these shared interests. And I think that autistic community has been such a good gift to me, I'm not autistic myself, but learning from autistic friends and family, that it's a way to cope.
Yeah.
When you do face those really big hurdles in life.
Yeah. That is a really good point. It's made me think, because I was a Swiftie before it was cool. Disclaimer.
Yeah.
I got hated for loving her when I was in middle school. That was very funny. But when I think about it, when I got into her music and started finding other people that liked her music, I felt a sense of community.
Yeah.
We love the same thing, felt that sense of connection. I connect to her music and reflect on my own life and, sort of just find this hobby.
Yeah.
And I feel a sense of connection to other people that like the same thing. And at the same time, this is funny, I find something I can talk about that I know a lot about to other people. Even if we don't really like the same thing, I have something to share, and I'm happy to learn from other people. But then I think that's how we build connection too. We don't necessarily have to like the same thing, talk about the same thing, because if we keep talking about the same thing, we don't really learn anything. So I guess you're so right in saying that, that sense of community really helps our well-being, in the digital world. We don't really need to see each other face to face, but even just being in the same forum. And I actually find it funny. Some people make friends or just, stay really active on Reddit threads.
Yeah.
Without knowing who the other people are.
That's
and,
right,
it's the sense of connection and community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is identity is such an interesting thing, because you talk about self-identity.
Yeah.
And there's this idea of how the internet, I think when people first started thinking about the internet, it was this idea, this fear that everyone's anonymous. And now it's the opposite fear, that people are not anonymous and sharing too much of their personal lives online. True. Or a version of their personal lives.
True.
And this balance is because you've got people who may be trolls, who may be using a fake name, fake identity, or using an avatar, and there's not accountability around that, or they don't feel any sort of social responsibility through that anonymous identity. But for a lot of people who are from historically marginalized communities, and I'm thinking of the autistic community here, being able to be anonymous online means you can choose how much you share about your life.
Yeah.
And you can share, and you can be someone else in a way. In like, I think in the gaming world, you can be an avatar in Minecraft. You can, or you can be a zombie hunter in Back 4 Blood.
Yeah.
There's lots of different things you can do, and through those like projections of identity on game characters, you can find a community in a way that works for you, and you don't have to share your autistic trauma, or your, any trauma. If you're, from no matter what your identity is, you can change things up.
Yeah.
So that element of being able to choose what you share is really important. And I think people are more concerned these days when talking to teachers about kids sharing too much.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. Yeah, definitely. I think that's the challenge, right? So to close it out, we discussed a bunch of challenges with this identity in the digital world. What would be some strategies that you would recommend to our audience? And the people listening, they might actually be autistic. They might not be. They might be neurotypical. But we've addressed challenges about maintaining your own identity amongst everything that you get impacted by. We talked about social media and comparison. We talked about actually how good it is to have some other identity from time to time. But I guess there needs to be a balance, and we don't want to get lost in that online version of ourselves and forget about the real world. A very good example is Penny from The Big Bang Theory, if anyone has watched that, when she became a game character and she just forget about her life.
Yes.
So what would be the strategies you would recommend for us to balance these things and make sure that we just work on our well-being overall as part of nurturing this digital well-being?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that come to mind straight away. And the first one is making social media work for you and your needs.
Yeah.
And so I hear people going cold turkey, dropping on, dropping off, and people don't seem to stay off for very long. I've seen one person I follow on Twitter quit Twitter 3 times. Like I said, I'm done. Goodbye, everyone. I'm not on Twitter anymore. And then like all of a sudden they start posting as if they hadn't quit Twitter. I think for me, really it's making it work for you. So you're using it in a way that allows you to get the great parts of social media. Because of course there's great parts. That's why we have it.
Yeah.
That's why it hasn't just gone away.
Yeah.
If it just made people feel rubbish the whole time, I think the world would be, no, this is terrible. This is very dramatic. And so, yes, it is traumatic for some people, but there are obviously things that people are getting through social media. It's the reason that that person came back 3 times. And so I got really good advice.
Yeah.
Not from someone who's an academic researcher or not from someone who works in the tech sector. It was from a young woman who works in our cafe downstairs below the Melbourne Law School.
Okay. Yeah.
She said one day, because we were talking about Facebook, I said, oh, Facebook, it's so lame now. It's so not cool. And I said, but I've made lots of friends, from my time traveling overseas. It's the only way I have to connect with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do want to check in and just go onto their profile and see who's had a baby, that sort of thing. Those big life milestones, or where are they now? Are they still here? I'm visiting Toronto. I want to go see if they're in Toronto. How do I check that? So her recommendation was, and then she said, I've just gone to Facebook and I've unfollowed everyone. And okay, so don't come up in the timeline thing anymore. It's just the groups that you want to see in the timeline. Every one of the people, I'm still friends with them. I haven't unfriended them, so there's not that sort of drama.
Yep.
I don't think anyone cares about that anymore on Facebook. But yeah.
Maybe some people do.
Some people might do. My parents would, yes. Yeah. Hi, Mum and Dad, if you're listening. But it is unfollowing everyone. So you can choose opt in, because when you get people only sharing the best parts of their life, I think we all know this now, that it seems like everything's perfect and your life is terrible in comparison. You start comparing yourself, unfollowing everyone, and it is, it can belong to your favorite cat group or your Taylor Swift fan group.
Yeah.
And then you can choose under what conditions you want to, see something.
Yeah.
I think that was really good advice. And it has helped me to shape the use of that particular platform in a way that works for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not being dictated to by Mr. Zuckerberg how I use his platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's a small thing, but you can do that on other platforms too.
Exactly.
Yeah, and use it in a way that works for you.
Yeah, great tip.
I think the other thing that when I think about practical advice around social media use is also, I'm coming back to, I'll probably come to gaming communities here. It's finding places where there is some accountability. And I'm talking about some servers, for example, for Minecraft are the Wild West. You've got people just using racial slurs. You've got people just, it's just very full. And I don't think that's a really healthy space for anyone, to be frank. There's whitelist servers and there's different gaming communities where they have a community policy. If you go into those gaming servers that are called whitelist servers, where you have to verify your identity to get on there.
Yeah.
Particularly for people who are neurodivergent, that's been a really, really great space. A man called Stuart Duncan from Ontario in Canada set up the Ortcraft server, and that's a really great space. It's a Minecraft world. I don't know if you know Minecraft. Do you know Minecraft?
I just started playing it recently.
Great. Yeah. So it's like 3D Lego for your listeners. You can build stuff with hundreds of thousands of other people and build worlds.
Yeah.
Just think of it like a giant virtual Lego set.
Yeah, I don't know that there's actually the online community, because I just started playing and I was basically just by myself getting killed every 5 minutes. But it's fun.
So Stuart Duncan had 2 autistic children, he still does, and they were getting bullied horrendously online, playing on these open servers. So he set up Ortcraft, which is a dedicated server for autistic people and immediate family members. You have to verify your identity and then you can join the server. And that way, if you don't follow the community guidelines, you're taken off the server, you're kicked out. And it's just become, one of my colleagues at University of California, Santa Cruz, Kate Ringland, did some seminal PhD research around how this little Minecraft server for autistic people became this space for kids who are getting bullied at high school or middle school. Autistic kids could come home and find other people with shared lived experiences. And it became like a de facto virtual support network. And so many people were saying how it saved their lives.
Yeah.
And it became this example of online spaces being a space for empowering well-being, building that connections, building that sense of self, building resilience around those challenges. So I guess it's finding using social media in a way that makes you feel good and finding online spaces that make you feel good.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great tip because we can curate our feed. If anyone doesn't play games as much like myself, we can start by curating our feed, social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatnot. And then, beyond that, like you said, gaming communities, wonderful space, but, be careful which community you join and find the right server for you.
That's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, there you go. So I think we've covered quite a bit on digital well-being. And to be honest, maybe some of our listeners have started getting lost because we've talked about so many things, including Minecraft and Taylor Swift, lots of topics. So now to close it out, let's talk about a practice or a habit that you would recommend to our audience. This might be something you do yourself. We've covered quite a few tips already. But to kind of highlight something that you do to manage your identity, especially in the digital space, so that, it doesn't impact your well-being and you can manage your well-being better, what would that thing be?
I guess it goes along with the unfollowing part.
Yeah.
I am very careful what I share online. And I think when people feel like they don't have that immediate friendship circle, immediate either in a physically co-located space, like in the same city, like a friendship circle in the same city, or like a closed off group like a Discord server or something like that with friends overseas, or friends around the world. I think when people start openly sharing about their private life, their fights they've had with their partners, and the disagreements they've had at work and those sorts of things, I think that becomes quite unhealthy in the sense people overshare and then they regret it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think back to those early days we talked about earlier in this podcast about 2006 and how Facebook was the Wild West. People were sharing everything.
Yeah.
So I actually use social media now professionally. So it is a curated. You're not getting the real or the whole me, I should say, rather than the real me.
Yeah.
You're getting as a professional network, LinkedIn and X or Twitter.
Yeah.
X, I know.
Sounds so weird.
Sounds so weird.
Yeah.
And I just think, the idea that if you think about what outcomes you want to get, for me, social media, I've got a Facebook account that I dedicate to personal relationships. And that's where I use Messenger or group messages or WhatsApp message groups for personal interactions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I've got my LinkedIn and Twitter, and it's been really clear about those lines of delineation. They're the ones that I'm sharing with my employers. My Facebook is all locked down. It's not in my name. And not that there's anything on there, because I've gone through and culled anything that could be remotely controversial. But it is just the fact that this is separating my peas and carrots. This is keeping my personal and private lives very separate.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone needs to know about my partner or our life together on my LinkedIn.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
No.
Actually, some people post about that on LinkedIn. I have seen.
Yeah.
But it's your personal choice.
It is personal choice. And and I guess that's my choice there, because I'm like, well, I don't know who's looking at this.
Yeah.
I don't know under what conditions they're looking at it.
Yeah.
And I haven't, it's just one of those things. I feel like I don't particularly think that benefits anyone who'd be following me also. Like, why would they care, what my cat had for breakfast?
Yeah. I guess it depends at the end of the day on what you want to achieve with social media. And
That's right, yeah.
I think that's a really good point that you made there. And that is a great tip, because sometimes we don't really think about the outcome. We just do it because everybody else is doing that. Like, like the example I just gave you. So you don't post anything personal on your LinkedIn profile. Some people do.
Yeah.
But that's their personal choice. And maybe they have a separate goal by portraying, the full story or something like that. So it depends on their personal goal.
And you don't know what's going to happen 10 years down the road. I think that's the foresight that we didn't have when we were younger. People posting political views on, things like, political views on, let's say, making a joke about something in Indonesia, and then 10 years down the time, you're working with a group in Indonesia and someone digs out this old tweet or something you've made a joke about.
Yeah.
And it's like you've offended someone without even realizing that that's a thing.
That's so
So
true.
it's thinking through who, in the realms of possibility, who could read this and how can they be interpreted? And you can't always predict how things will be interpreted, but you can kind of take a sensible guess and go, if I'm going to comment on something about someone else's culture or country, or I'm going to comment on something about, my views on a political issue, maybe 10 years down the road, I'm going to regret posting that. Or it's going to be, even if I still, I use the example of, marriage equality. For a long time, I've believed, and I'm so glad Australia has marriage equality. Yeah. If I'm working in maybe a more conservative country that doesn't have, is that going to hurt my career? I'd hope that I would still stick to my values.
Yeah.
But I don't think necessarily it's always I don't think it's always a safe thing to do, for example.
Yeah.
To put it out there. It can hurt your career prospects.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the bottom line is think before you post. What are you doing this for? Why are you doing it? Who is this for?
Commenting on other governments is a big one. If you're going to work, you never know where you're going to work.
Yeah.
It's just thinking through the possible ramifications. And you can still, if it's something that's really meaningful to you, like the marriage equality one was meaningful to me. So I've kept those posts up. But I think, you've got to really, kids and young adults aren't always aware of the possible consequences.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great tip for everyone, not just young people, but everyone. Because things we do on the internet always have a consequence. If not today, then one day down the line, it might just bubble up. We don't know. So I think that's a good tip. Now we're at the end of the episode, and before we let you go, we have open mic, and I know you've got something you would like to share with the audience. So take it away, Matt.
Yeah. So I would like to share with the audience about our work around neurodiversity and neurodivergent, neurodiversity affirming social capacity building groups. What this means, I know that's a big mouthful. What this means is we are running gaming groups for neurodivergent young people using cooperative video games, so games where you have to work as a team together. Yeah. And the idea that we're using something that's a strength and interest for these young people to help them to build those connections and to meet other people, and also develop those leadership and self-advocacy skills. And I think in terms of open mic, from that work at Next Level Collaboration, this program, I've really learnt the value of building from strengths and interests. So if you're listening to this podcast, maybe it's thinking about the neurodivergent people in your lives and thinking about what you can do to build from strengths and interests. It may be gaming, it may be art, it may be music, it may be sport, whatever it is, and how you can harness that. And I think that's the big social change I'd love to see, is this flipping around from deficits and trying to fix people to trying to say, hey, how can we harness strengths and interests? And how can we use these and highlight these strengths and interests and build from these to develop skills that everyone needs, and not trying to make all neurodivergent people like neurotypical people?
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that message. I think it's a very important one, especially given the conversation we just had about well-being and inclusiveness when it comes to well-being.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so you mentioned earlier that you do use LinkedIn and Twitter for professional networking. Yeah. If our audience would like to get in touch with you or just subscribe to your newsletters, maybe, where should they go?
Yeah, so you can go and find me at Hat Designs is my handle on Twitter, or X, sorry, Elon, X. And then on LinkedIn, I'm just Matthew Harrison, and you've searched Matthew Harrison, University of Melbourne. You'll see my smiling face. Yeah. Click on me and add me. And
beautiful.
Yeah, you can read more about my work there.
Thank you. Thanks so much for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me.
You have been listening to Doing Well, the Wellbeing Science Insights Podcast, produced by the Wellbeing Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website, we.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Lu Ngo. Thanks for tuning in.